All right, welcome to another edition of Buck What You Heard. My name is Gene. You can reach me at Super Heavyweight. You follow me, I follow you back. I'm joined tonight by Michael Pless. How you doing, Michael?
I'm doing good, Gene. Glad to be back on and talk some Bucks football. It's been a couple interesting weeks for sure.
Yeah, most definitely. And I know that I caught you in the middle of putting up a new article, and I was going to see if maybe you want to give the listeners a sneak peek at what we got going on.
Yeah, It's gonna be about a defensive tackle prospect coming out in this year's draft. One of just a rare athlete is what I'm going to hint at. Very freakish kind of player that I think could be a possibility for the Bucks at 7. Could really change the way that the Bucks play defense. I'll leave it at that.
All right. So, have you changed your mind at all about Chubb or possibly Saquon Barkley? Or I've read a couple of articles about Barkley, and
Mhm.
I don't know if his stock is dropping or what's going to happen. I've heard people that said that they've watched his game film and they have a different opinion. Again,
Mhm.
I would be hard pressed to see the Bucks draft a running back that high up, especially with all the
Mhm.
glaring needs that they have. So I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, I think Barkley's going to go top 5. I fail to see him dropping any farther. I mean, the guy's just a rare athlete, very special player, a lot of talent. Again, he needs coaching like every other prospect, but still needs to refine his game a little bit. Inconsistent tape at times, but again, he's a hell of a player, and I expect him to go pretty early. Um, Probably to Cleveland. That looks like a likely landing spot, maybe Indianapolis. As far as Bradley Chubb, I mean, I love that guy. I wrote an article on him. I think he's absolute beast at his position. I think he could be someone that could be really good down the line. Again, he's probably going to be gone before the Bucks pick, unfortunately. But again, crazier things have happened. We all said OJ Howard was going to be gone, and he was available at 19. Again, different position. Bradley Chubb plays pass. He's a pass rushing defensive end, which is very high in demand, and it looks like the Colts, is going to be his likely spot because they need pass rushers, just like any other team.
Yeah. I noticed Neil Larkins was saying to the Giants probably. Well, I don't know. The Giants need a running back too. So again,
Yeah.
and then their quarterback position too is very much in question. I mean, how much longer is Eli Manning going to be available? And again, you have
Mm-hmm.
to be looking forward to the future. And you look at a great example was the New England Patriots having Jimmy Garoppolo sitting behind Tom Brady, and then they up and trade him, and now you look at their future and wonder who would they put behind under center after Tom Brady's gone. So getting that getting that franchise quarterback, we don't have to worry about that. We have the luxury of Jameis Winston, and whether people like him or they don't like him, that's our franchise quarterback as of right now. And it's not something that we're having to worry about. Where in past seasons we have had to worry about that. So it's definitely something. Robert Green said the Colts need a running back or a quarterback. We'll see. I think Frank Wright. He's going to come in there and he may do some things. He was a former quarterback, so you're right. That could be a
Mm-hmm.
potential thing to get a quarterback to put in behind Andrew Luck, because it's uncertain what you're going to get out of him this year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I would agree with that. I think, it's the Colts and the Browns are pretty much the wild cards for this draft. They're going to control what happens for the Bucks at 7. I think, whoever the Colts pick, I think that's going to open up pretty much the door for the next guy for the Bucks. I mean, if the Colts go, quarterback or running back, like Robert says, I mean, I think there's a very good chance Bradley Chubb could be available. So, again, they really hold the cards. And I think, hopefully that is the way that the Colts are thinking, because they need some help, especially for Andrew Luck. If they can get a running back to help him out, or get an offensive lineman, even like Quentin Nelson, or if they want to go young and get a quarterback to build for the future, then that's definitely a possibility.
Yeah, most definitely. So I want to get down to the business at hand here. You know, we're here to talk about the Bucs, and the big news right now is the defensive line coach getting fired. And thanks to Pewter Report for breaking that story. That was very impressive, and hard work deserves to get rewarded. And I always appreciate those guys. But what are your thoughts on that? I know it's been polar opposites. On you go on social media, some people are good with it, other people are not good with it because they feel like the defensive coordinator should have been gone too. So what are your thoughts? Just don't hold back, don't be scared.
Yeah, I mean, I found it interesting because they just took so long to make this decision. I guess they were still doing the evaluation process, looking at everything that went wrong for the season, and 22 sacks is just not good enough from your defensive line, and this league is about results, and unfortunately Jay Hayes was just it's just too up and down. I know the previous year I think we had, I want to say 38 sacks or something along those lines from our defensive line. So that might be a little high, but again, it's I don't know. I think he's the scapegoat. I mean, if you want to call it that. I mean, he's pretty much, they had to make a change. And again, yeah, I know it's probably fair that Mike Smith probably should have been gone, but again, like we've been saying, the talent.
Let me jump in here right here. I want to interject some. I want to see what your thoughts are on this. With Jason Light being the general manager, do you feel like he provided enough weapons, enough pieces on that defensive line to make a difference to where Hayes would have somebody to coach? Because I want you to think, just right now and just off the top of your head, who are your top two ends? Who are your top two ends on this defense last season, in your opinion?
Well, I mean, that's a great point, because I mean, it just shows you the talent was not there, and it's unfair to pretty much the whole defensive staff, because we didn't have a front seven to work with as far as defensive line. Yeah, we had our linebackers, but when you don't have the pieces up front, Noah Spence goes down early, and you're kind of scrambling to create pass rush. It doesn't help. So, but again, it's coach's job to coach these players up and have them produce. And again, I know a lot of players on the Bucs were upset about the stunts and calling, different rotations and the line, how they were lining up as far as defense goes. So I know there were some issues there, and that's probably what caused the firing, I'm assuming. But
yeah, and I don't know if you remember back to Bill Sheridan and all the stunts that guy was doing. I mean, I don't know. Right, again, when you look at this defensive line and Ed Larkins, I'm going to ask you this question. I know you say is it talent or scheme? Ed Larkins, to you, could you name five defensive linemen on the Tampa Bay Bucs right now that could go to another team and start? I mean that right there, to me, it says a lot. I mean, as far as the quality of what you have on that line. So, again, yeah, I understand when you talk about those two different things, but I think it's important to remember what you have to work with. And as I look at that team, as I look at that line, I just can't see that many players that would go to another team and start.
No, I think that's fair. I mean, I would say, you have Gerald McCoy, Noah Spence, I think could be a good starter. Robert Ayers is capable. Same thing with William Golston, I would say is capable, but that's four. And then the rest are kind of, up and down. I think Clinton McDonald, when healthy, is a decent starter, more of a backup though. And Chris Baker, I mean, he's just too up and down.
Yeah. And I talked about this a few weeks ago, but I'm going to bring it back up again because I think I have to drive this point home. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers have not address the defensive line in a manner that will get them to where they need to be. Any kind of consistency, any kind of depth. If you go all the way back to 2003, think about your free agents, think about the draft picks, all the missed draft picks in that position. And they only had a few high draft picks where you had Gerald McCoy, I want to say Price.
Mm-hmm.
Who's that other idiot that's in Canada right now? What's his name?
Daquan Bowers.
Daquan Bowers. And then the one that passed away, the number 9, he's 19. Gaines Adams.
Yeah, Gaines Adams. You had Roy Miller. Yeah.
There just weren't a lot of quality picks in the draft. And in free agency, all the misses, you can't neglect a line and then draft a guy and then throw a few free agents at it. It's not going to work. Mm-hmm. It's just been, and to be honest, the defensive line has been a liability since, for a long time. And, again, it's just one of those things that they just neglected it. And here we are in the 11th hour. You've got another general manager that's about to lose his job, where he's built up other parts of the team. I mean, you can look at the linebacker core and say the linebacker core is solid. You could look at the tight ends and say the tight ends are solid. And, it's just hard when you don't have quality talent on either side of the ball, where you had an inept general manager for years, and then you're trying to build all this stuff up. It's hard to do. And I'm not making excuses. I'm just talking about the players that I've seen. I'm looking at the body of work from 2003 to the present, and there have been more misses than hits on this team.
Yeah, I mean, you look at Jason Light's tenure, he's only drafted, two defensive linemen in his 4 years, which is just that's not good enough. You have to add defensive linemen pretty much every year, I think, or at least a lineman in the draft consistently. Now he's tried to add free agents as far as defensive line goes. I mean, he tried with Michael Johnson, didn't work out. Robert Ayers, Chris Baker, Clint McDonald has been decent. Same thing with Robert Ayers, but again, just not good enough. And you find your stars in the draft, and I think he's got to start, especially this offseason, he's got to address the defensive line, and he's got to do it at multiple positions. I think you have to add defensive end, defensive tackle, and you have to at least add multiple of both of those spots, at least 4, I think, whether that's free agency or the draft or a combination. It has to be an emphasis this offseason for sure.
Yeah. I mean, you look at the Jacksonville Jaguars. I mean, what the Jaguars did through the draft, they got a lot of their players, their key players. However, they go out and they get they get a key free agent that puts them over the top, that makes their defensive line just that much better. You can. It's hard to do. It's hard to build a defensive line just through free agency. You have to be addressing this year after year. There may be times where you may have to skip a year, but it has to be something that consistently happens. And it can't be these number 7, number 5, number 6 round picks. It has to be some of these guys that can come in and immediately contribute. It just what you're getting is a defensive line that's an afterthought.
Yeah, absolutely. And like I've said in past podcasts, that we have to be creative as far as finding guys finding specialty type players. I think that has to become something more for this team, whether finding guys that just know how to pass rush. And that's really what this team needs to start looking, outside the box, instead of pinpointing guys to certain spots and pinpointing them to certain positions as far as what they play. Now, Jason Light has done this as far as finding guys that can be versatile. You look at Vernon Hargreaves, who can play outside or inside at the cornerback position, or you look at like a OJ Howard, who's a blocking tight end, but it can also be a receiving threat down the field. So just finding guys that can do something really well is something that I think would be something of value, especially just guys that know how to pass rush, whether they're linebackers or defensive line, but they can rush the quarterback. I think that's something we need to look at.
Yeah, most definitely. And Peter Cass was saying Jason Light has placed a lot of value on offense so far. You know what? To be honest, they're missing maybe a few offensive linemen and a running back, and this is a rock solid. This is a rock solid offense. The defensive line. If you fix the defensive line with the linebacker core that you have, I mean, you can do quite a bit. And I can see a lot of games that were lost this past year, that could have been won with the solid defense, with the solid defensive line.
Yeah, and Gene, let me, on Peter Cass' point, I mean, yeah, Jason has placed a lot of emphasis on the offense, but for good reason.
Oh, absolutely.
You look at the head coach. I mean, he's an offensive-minded head coach, and your offense should be the strength of this team. I mean, especially when you have a guy who's supposed to be a legit offensive mind that can make things happen with his, as far as design and play calling. Allegedly, that's supposed to be the case, and you're putting all your resources to the offense because you're building around Jameis Winston, you're building around your Mike Evans and those kind of guys. I mean, this offense should be scoring 25 points a game at least, and that's really it just hasn't happened. I mean, that's been kind of the downfall for this team so far, for Jason Light, and as far as what his moves have taken place. But now it's time to shore up the D.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. Go ahead.
No, you're good. You're good.
Okay. To your point, and everybody, I want it to be clear. I love Jason Light. I think he's one of my favorite GMs over the past couple of, going back to Rich McKay, only because, of what he's been able to accomplish. He came in as general manager and the cupboard was bare on both sides of the ball. And, you can argue that 6 ways to Sunday, but this team was not in any good position on either side of the ball. You had Levante David, you had Gerald McCoy, and at that time you had Mason Foster. You just didn't have a lot on either side of the ball, to be very honest. That was something that he came in and he addressed what he felt like. It's kind of pick your poison. He could have gone heavy defense, and we would definitely be talking about the offense now. Instead, it was more on the offensive side of the ball. They drafted Jameis Winston. They went in, they got some tight ends. They made some good moves getting in Cameron Brate, bringing in O.J. Howard, and, getting Ali Marpet, and just, players like that to build up that offense. And they're just, a few pieces away, and I think they'll be a rock solid offense. Unfortunately, Doug Martin didn't work out, but you know what? That's 2017. We're into 2018. Let's keep it moving. Get somebody back there who can run the ball, and let's do something. Get 1,000-yard rusher. I would love to see that. I think that at minimum should be a goal for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, having a 1,000-yard rusher. When I look at the New Orleans Saints, when I look at the Atlanta Falcons, when I look at the Carolina Panthers, they all have 1,000-yard rushers. I mean, that's the one thing that Tampa didn't have is a 1,000-yard rusher. But I don't mean to jump back and forth, but my point is Jason Light has done good with what he's had to work with. And a lot of people are going to talk about Arguello. They're going to talk about Austin Seferian-Jenkins, but Seferian-Jenkins is in the NFL. He's playing for the Jets, and he just didn't have it from here to here. He wasn't meant to be here in Tampa. So, it is what it is. No general manager is perfect, but I like what he's done. And as long as he can come in and address this defense, get some players in there that, that can make plays. What would you call it? Want to? That have that want to. Because if you get some guys in there that are hungry to come in and play and make a start in the NFL, I mean, that's what you need right there. You need guys out there that aren't comfortable with their position. You want guys out there that are trying to make the team, and they're going to, do whatever they have to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. It's, finding guys that love this game, and I think Jason Light has done a pretty good job of that so far. Especially with his draft picks, finding guys that want to get better and love this game and will do anything it takes to win games. And I think he's found that with Quan Alexander, Jameis Winston, Ali Marpet, guys like that just they want to. Yeah, Kendall Beckwith, guys that just want it to be the best. They want to get after it and continue to strive for greatness. I think that's something that we have to continue to do and find those right players. And now we just need to apply that to free agency and really focus on finding the right fits, because that's kind of been Jason Light's kryptonite so far is figuring out free agency and finding impact players there. So hopefully, with this offseason really being a critical one and for both Jason Light and Dirk Cutter, because they know they have to win now. Hopefully they can get that done.
We were talking about this last week too. To me, the key is getting a player, a free agent, to come in who's been playing at a high level, not just 1 year, but multiple years. And I keep going back to the example of Simeon Rice. Simeon Rice was already playing at a high level in Arizona before he came to Tampa, already doing it. So when he came here and he got with that line, he just played better because of the players that were around him. And that's what we need to see. I don't want to see a guy that had a breakout season, one breakout season during a contract year. That don't mean nothing. That doesn't mean anything to me. There's not enough game film there to tell you whether this guy is good or bad. And that's the truth of the matter. I mean, I look at Chris Baker. Chris Baker hasn't been consistently good his whole career, has he?
No.
Exactly. We just, and again, there's just not enough game film to say, okay, look at what Chris Baker did this year, and this year. We see what he did in his contract year, and then he ended up coming over to Tampa, and he just kind of Hainsworth it.
No, I agree. I mean, they have to find guys. Like I said, it's all about consistency. Like you're saying here, finding guys that can come in and produce right away. Guys that are on the uprise or the upswing is something to look for. You look at I'm trying to think. Even like our he was kind of later, but Vincent Jackson. That was a guy that has continued to produce. And we brought him in, and that was a great signing. And that was probably one of our better free agent signings in a long time. And
that's another great example. I have to use him too. And besides Simeon Rice, that's a great example too.
So just finding guys like that, and that's why you see a lot of Bucs fans talk about Michael Bennett, talk about maybe a Robert Quinn from the Rams, maybe getting let go. So those are guys to look for, especially if you have to pay them a higher price. I think it's worth it. Short-term deal. Bring these guys in.
Not to beat a dead horse, but that's why, when we were talking about Calais Campbell would have been a no-brainer here, only because he was destroying the AFC West. He was destroying everybody over there, or the NFC West, excuse me. He was going through people. I mean, when you had to deal with Kansas, San Francisco, the Seattle Seahawks, and the Rams, he was having a field day with sacks and stuff. He just was playing at a high level, and he would have been perfect here in Tampa just because of that.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. So it's it's unfortunate because
and those are examples of what I'm talking about. Like you were saying, players that play at a high level and they get out there and they have that want to, as you call it.
Yeah, absolutely. And not only that, but they know how to win, and they know what it takes to be successful because they've been doing it for multiple years in this league. And I think that's something that can transition to the younger guys and hopefully teach these guys how to be great, like a Noah Spence, Vernon Hargraves, guys like that, that are on the cusp of figuring it out, but they just haven't quite yet. And it's something that, this team needs more of, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, I'm glad we're at a point right now where we don't have to hear the word value picks or value free agents or none of that. You want somebody that's going to either come in and play, or they're going to, you're not going to pick them up. I'm just sick. The value, I understand the value. You're worried about the cap. You're worried about this. You're worried about that. You got to go out and get some guys that are going to come in here and contribute immediately, as we're talking free agency.
Yeah, as far as value goes, I mean, the value is only good if the guy produces. I mean, point period. Value can, it could look good on paper as far as value. Yeah, you could sign a guy for 1 year, $5 million. Yeah, that looks great on paper. But if the guy has 0 sacks or 0 production, that's not going to cut it. I mean, he's going to be gone the next year. And so what's the point of value? If he's not producing, then obviously it's not a value to your team, and it's not a value, for your future going forward. So you got to do what's best for your team, and finding guys that can help you win. That's how it goes. Again, yeah, there is cap and, cap space and all that. And again, I know we have to sign guys back coming up here in the next couple of years, but you got to find ways to get wins and get into the playoffs. I mean, it's way overdue for this franchise, and you're at a point where you're possibly looking at new management next year if you don't win this season. So
you got to throw the whole team away.
Yeah. So, so it's time to put up or shut up, as they like to say it. I mean, you got to go in there and get it done.
Yeah, absolutely. And for whatever reason, they have to make the most of all of these draft picks. Every free agent has to be a home run. I know that's saying a lot in the 11th hour, but that's the only way you will see Jason Light and Dirk Cutter back in the Tampa Bay organization, is if they can hit a home run, if they can get this team to the playoffs. And you know what? And I want to go on record saying this right now. I don't want to hear about the schedule. I really don't. I've gotten into debates with people about the schedule, and all I have to do is remind them of 2016 when the Bucs had their first winning season since 2010. And everybody and their grandmother talked about how tough that schedule was. And the Bucs went out there and won. The Bucs have to go out and play their game. Whoever they have, whatever they do, they've got to go out there and play their game. So the schedule, miss me with that conversation. That's something I'm not, whatever. It is what it is. They still have to go out and play. Amazement 717, should the Bucs move Marpet to guard and upgrade the center position, or keep him at center and maybe draft Nelson? You know what, Amazement, you're reading my mind, because I was thinking that very same thing. Guards are like gold in the NFL. A good guard, a Pro Bowl guard, is really like gold. And when you've got somebody like Ali Marpet, who is rock solid in that guard position, and you move him to center, and it makes it difficult. I understand the experiment, bringing him in at center and how far along he came, but putting Marpet back at guard and drafting a center, there are a lot more opportunities to get players, whether it's free agency or it's through the draft, to get a center rather than getting a guard. And I think a guard would be a little bit more important protecting Jameis Winston than the center position. Maybe I'm wrong here.
No, that's definitely being considered by the Bucs. According to the Pewter Report, I think Ryan Jensen from Baltimore is one of our top, free agent targets. So if they could sign a Ryan Jensen, move him, at center, have Ali Marpet back at guard, and maybe draft a Quentin Nelson. I mean, your interior offensive line is instantly fixed and upgraded, and you probably have one of the better offensive lines in the league. So that's a dream scenario for the Bucs offense as far as that goes. If they can, even if they sign a Jensen and have, Marpet back at right guard, and maybe bring a Sweezy back and put him at left guard. I don't know if that's a possibility, or if you sign another guard or draft a guard, to put at the left side. So yeah, it's definitely an option. And I think that'll definitely be considered, because again, it's about finding the best guys you can put on the field, and you have to give your, your offense.
Right there. You summed up the whole Buccaneers offseason. The best guys you can put on the field. There needs to be competition at every level. And again, the one position that we've heard a little bit about, I kind of talked about it a little bit, but the running back position. There are players to be had in the draft, and I think you can find players in the later rounds that will produce. And hopefully we don't end up with another McMuffin like last year, but hopefully you can get somebody in there that can actually do what they need to do. But a lot of holes to fill. I mean, when you talk about the defensive line, getting a little bit of depth at a defensive tackle, where do you start? And one name that's kind of interesting, I don't know if he's available, but Coney Ealy. What would you think about the Bucs giving him a look?
Yeah, Coney Ealy's a interesting player. He had that big Super Bowl game a couple years back, and then just kind of went down a little bit, kind of disappeared. Went to multiple teams. Went to the Patriots, I think, and then he was on back with the Jets, I believe, or something along those lines. And,
right.
Just kind of been inconsistent, kind of up and down. But again, if you could get him for a reasonable contract and bring him in here, I would definitely like to see him as a definitely a rotational piece for sure. I think he can still pass rush and provide you something off the edge. So interesting player for sure.
Yeah, definitely so. Amazement 717 was saying, could Stevie Tui Kuluatu, could he be that guy next to Gerald McCoy next season? Unfortunately, I just did not get to see enough of him to really say yes or no on that. Because of his injuries, we didn't really get a good look at him on the pro level to really make that judgment. The way I'm going to look at him right now is if they're bringing him back, this is just like him this is his rookie season. However, I know he's been on the sideline. He's got to watch the speed of the game and stuff, but actually playing is a lot different. I give a good example of Kenny Bell. When Kenny Bell was drafted and he was out with the injury, you never really could get in a true assessment of what he could do. And then he came back the next year and he wasn't the same. Different position, but same kind of scenario where you have a guy who you draft. He's a late round pick, however, but you bring him in and, you try to get him to where you think he could be a piece to fit on this line. And then he gets injured. So you really don't know what you have with him until this season, when you get into OTAs, camp and preseason to see where he fits into this team, if he even actually fits in here.
Yeah, I mean, watching Stevie T last year in preseason, it seemed like everything was moving a little too fast for him. Seemed like he was having trouble slowing the game down a little bit, having trouble making plays in game. Still raw. He's a very raw player, so I think technique is going to be his biggest concern, as far as how he needs to get better. If he can improve that, I mean, he's got the physical tools for sure. I mean, he's a big body, knows how to definitely hold the line and hold up his blockers. So I think if he can learn how to be more consistent with his shed blocking, I think he could be somebody that, we could count on. But again, he's, 7th round pick. He's still got a lot of work to be done. So that's going to be a guy to keep your eye on, see what he can do as far as this offseason and hopefully make an impact.
All right. So again, there's talk in Chicago of getting rid of cutting Mike Glennon, and I've seen a lot of people on social media saying, "Oh, we would welcome Mike Glennon back to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers." Where do you see Mike? Me personally, I was okay with what Ryan Fitzpatrick did. I realize that he's getting older. I understand that, but if you have a scenario like you did last year, Jameis Winston had a few games that he was out trying to heal a shoulder injury.
Right.
He came in and he didn't throw the whole game away. And he did okay. He did what he needed to do. Would you consider Mike Glennon an upgrade? When I saw from Mike Glennon, he is who I pretty much thought he was after that 2-win season where he had the opportunity to take control and be the starting quarterback for the Bucs, but he didn't do that. So what I
Right.
saw from him is what I'm used to seeing from him before Mitch Trubisky came in and took over for him. So, my question to you is, would he be considered for that backup quarterback position here in Tampa?
I think it's definitely an option. I think Jason Light, wanted to re-sign Mike Glennon. He didn't expect the
Bro,
Bears
a lot of
to,
money.
throw a lot of money at him, and the Bucs were prepared to give Glennon a pretty good contract, and I could see him coming back again. Ryan Fitzpatrick, I thought was okay. Again, the good news about Glennon, he knows the offense. He'd be, familiar with, how Dirk Cutter wants to run things and things like that, and just in case, Jameis Winston went out again with injury, or I know there's a looming suspension maybe. So, that's a possibility as far as needing a good backup quarterback. And you look at the Super Bowl team, they had Nick Foles as their backup and led them to a championship. So having a good backup quarterback is important in my eyes, and if you can get a good one, then I'm for it. So I think Glennon's a possibility, and I think he's better than people give him credit for. I think a lot of the situations where he started, he hasn't had much around him as far as talent goes, and that has definitely hurt his cause. But
well, Eric Moreno said he doesn't think that Jameis Winston will get suspended. I don't know how that's going to go, to be honest. The NFL is so jacked up right now. There's no letter of the law. It's case by case basis. So I don't know. I don't know what could happen here. Again, it could be Jameis Winston gets suspended. We could be talking about this in a couple of months. So again, the NFL is so depressing at times, the way they handle stuff. I'm not even going to try to pretend to guess how this is going to go.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with that. And I'm just keeping it in the back of my mind just in case, I'm not surprised if it does happen. But again, hoping it doesn't. I don't think he should be suspended, but this league is crazy, like you mentioned.
Yeah, actually, it really is. So, have we heard anything? How far along is this investigation, or where are they at with it? I mean, is this going to drag on until preseason?
Yeah, I haven't heard any news, and that's to be expected. I mean, the NFL is very quiet when it comes to, their investigations. They're not going to let anything out. So, I mean, we probably won't hear anything until, it's preseason time, or, along those lines when we get into training camp.
Yeah, it's a messed up situation, and I'm seeing more and more cases of these females that are, making it hard for other females who actually experience bad situations. And I'm going to say that because there are cases where people are guilty, but at the same time, there are cases where you don't know what's happening. And I think Jameis Winston, I still don't know everything that happened because he said, she said. And,
Right.
I'm not even going to try to say, well, he's right or he's wrong, but just based on everything that I've seen, I just don't see compelling evidence that, that's the case. I just don't know.
Right.
And again, he just kind of put himself in the same situation he did at Florida State. I'm just going to leave it at that because, if he is guilty, he does deserve to get suspended. I'm going to say that because, women have rights. I mean, we all have rights. And again, if he's wrong, he's wrong. If he's right, he should be out there playing. Put it that way.
Yeah.
And here's an interesting question for you. Sean Castile was asking, how much money do you think Mike Evans will get on his new contract? This contract is going to be monster because I have to say that Mike Evans is one of the top 5 wide receivers in the NFL. I don't know how you feel about it, but I think he is. When his head's in the game and when he's on point, I would say that.
Yeah, I mean, he's already come out and said that he's gonna, not get an extension this year. He's gonna, hold those talks for next offseason, and he's gonna try to get top player money. So I think
So
he's looking at
you can
probably
expect a
anywhere.
lot of yards from him this year then.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I think you probably can expect double-digit touchdowns. Um, and I think he'll probably end up demanding probably 15 million at the lowest, and could probably make 20 million if he really, plays it upright. I think he could be a 20 million per year player. So, the way the market is continuing to rise, I mean, you look at what Alex Smith made at quarterback. I mean, the contracts continue to
That
go
was
up. So
disgusting. What Garoppolo
yeah,
got was disgusting. That was
and Garoppolo, yeah,
worse than when Mike Glenn. I mean, when I think about that player, I mean, you got
yeah,
four, maybe 5 games of game film on this guy, and
yeah.
you ring him up like that. Bro, I
Yeah,
don't know, because it reminds me of Matt Castle. Matt Castle,
right.
Matt Castle pulled the same heist on the NFL as well. When you thought, hey, this guy is playing behind Tom Brady, let's get him over here. They're thinking, okay, he's behind Tom Brady, he's going to do something for us, and it just wasn't the case. We still don't know what this guy's capable of doing. But kind of getting back to Mike Evans, this is going to be huge. This is going to be a really big when it's all said and done. I would love for him to be a Buccaneer, but I understand if he doesn't. You've got to look at what's best for this team. I look at the Jacksonville Jaguars example. They're getting ready to be in salary cap hell unless their GM is a Mickey Loomis. They're going to have some. They're going to have some situations here in the next couple of years.
Yeah, I think Mike Evans will be back. I think he's gonna, we're gonna re-sign him. I don't have a problem. I don't see that being an issue. But again, this offseason will be kind of indicator of what Mike Evans is going to get, because you have some big names that are going to be free agents as far as receivers go. And there's going to be some contract extensions. I know Odell Beckham is trying to get an extension. So, whatever he gets, I think is going to be, I think Mike will probably get more than him, but again, it's going to be around that, same kind of numbers kind of thing. But I think Mike will stay. I think he loves it here. And I think him and Jameis, have such a bond. Yeah, he's going to be re-signed. I don't think that's going to be an issue.
Yeah. And, Eric Moreno said any chance of Mike Evans getting the franchise tag. You know what? To be honest, the franchise tag creates a lot of bad blood between player and team. I really don't see that happening. I think that they will work something out. Like you said, I mean, he does like it here in Tampa. And I think that you've got a young team that, despite last year, is still capable of doing big things. And I know I'm probably one of the minority here, but I believe that Tampa will bounce back from this loss this season, and they'll do big things. Only because you have Jameis Winston and Deshaun Jackson. They've played a whole season together. You've got OJ Howard and Jameis Winston. They played a whole season together. You've got a lot of players that, they have that year under their belt within the Tampa Bay organization, and it's just going to get better for them. So to be very honest, I mean, and I know a lot of people talk about Jameis Winston's turnovers, but at the end of the day, this guy's a competitor. And as well as I do, and Chris Godwin, I'll mention him in a second, as well as I do, you can't stop watching a Bucs game if it's a close game in the fourth quarter and not think that Jameis Winston will not find some way to try to win that game. Okay. So that's the compelling argument that he makes. And I really feel like, this team can bounce back. All I've heard on social media, all I've read is nothing but negative about, this season coming up. I believe that this team could surprise a lot of people and have a good season. You bring in some good veterans, you bring in a running back, and you've automatically improved what you had at the end of last season. So I believe that the Tampa Bay Buccaneers can bounce back from this. I don't think that, this is doom and gloom and we got to wait till the next regime gets in. We don't know. Not so fast, my friends, because these guys may stay here.
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely. I think the Bucks have right now they have a pretty good team on paper. Again, it's going to come down to just finding the key pieces they need this offseason. Obviously, pass rush and finding a way to run the football. I think those are their two biggest needs. You find a way to um, redesign your backfield as far as the run game goes, and get some offensive linemen to help them out. And you build that running game, and that pretty much solves your offensive issues, which is the red zone. And then defensively, if they can find a way to have a consistent pass rush, they can be a better defensive unit, even without making changes in the secondary. I think you could bring back the same secondary that they had last year. If they fix the pass rush, they're a complete different defense. So I think this team, yeah, yeah. So really, I think they can go places, like you said. I think they can have a turnaround season. My only concern with the team is the coaching staff. As long as the coaching staff doesn't hold them back, I think we'll be okay. But that's my main concern. I just don't have faith in this coaching staff. That's my negative. But I think Jason Light's going to do his best to put the players on the field, and get these guys in here, and get the players that are needed. And hopefully the coaching staff can fix their mistakes and get better as a unit. And hopefully that can lead us to where we want to go, and that's the playoffs.
Listen, and I'm going to say this too. I'm very comfortable with Jameis Winston being able to call plays at the line. I would love to see that. That adds another dynamic to this offense that, we haven't seen. He's capable of doing this. I realize that he makes some boneheaded plays here and there. So did Brett Favre. I'm not comparing the two. I'm just saying that there are certain players that's just their mentality. I'm going to do whatever I can to get this ball over here. I don't care who's there. And it's not a good mentality to have, but some people, they make it work. And Jameis Winston, I've seen him on several occasions where he's had a broken play and he's turned a broken play into something. So you have Jameis Winston calling plays at the line when he sees something in the defense and it goes against what he's hearing in his helmet. And he's like, okay, we're getting ready to do that. Squash that. We're getting ready to do that. Jameis Winston has a high enough football IQ that I would trust him with that offense to do whatever he needed to do to get that first down, get that touchdown, get the ball down the field, because I think he's capable of doing that.
Yeah, no, I agree with the Jameis, as far as him calling plays, and I agree with that aspect of it. Hopefully, with Todd Monken becoming the full-time offense coordinator, hopefully that's going to help the offense as far as game planning and how they're going to approach, game to game. I don't know if he's going to be play calling. I think Dirk Cutter's still going to hold on to the play calling. But again, just having Todd Monken as a full-time offense coordinator, he doesn't have to focus on the receivers, and he can just, help Dirk with his responsibilities as far as during the week and really get this offense on the same page going into each Sunday. I think that's going to be a bonus. And that way Dirk can focus more on what he's going to call, and focus more on the game management side of it, because that's really his weakness right now is game management. And I think if he can have more focus on that aspect, hopefully that can balance everything and make things more efficient going into this season.
You know what? And I'm glad you brought that up. Monken, I'm glad to see him just with that one responsibility. He can pay attention to detail. He can take care of more things on the offense instead of being spread out, spread thin. This is his focus, is making sure that he's got the details taken care of this. And I hope, in my mind, I felt like that was going to be of benefit to the offense. When you've got one guy doing double duty, I still have a problem with head coaches that aren't giving enough responsibility to the offensive coordinators. There's only a few guys that I know of who can do it and do it good. And everybody else, no, not so much. But I think this is one of those situations where I'm just glad that more responsibilities being delegated. And that's important to me because I feel like they can address things that they weren't able to address in the season last year. So, that's just one of those things that I'm excited about. I know it's a small thing, but I think that it's something that could be bigger in the grand scheme of things, because when you're fixing details, which we saw that Tampa really needed help with that last year, I think that's going to make a difference in key moments in close games, or it can.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it plays a big part. Just having attention to detail, like you said, that's critical. Smallest details make a difference in this game because it's a game of inches. And if you're not on your proper assignment, or if you're out of position, all those things come into hand. So, yeah, definitely. If we're more focused as far as, running the right routes, having the right assignments, all that comes into play. So, I think that's definitely a smart move by the Bucs, and hopefully this is something that can make the offensive coaching staff better overall. So, and help the players as well.
Yeah, and that's key. When you got guys like Chris Godwin, who has really come into his own. Chris Godwin is really looking good. He's somebody that I'm super excited about. He's going to compete with Adam Humphries. Not saying what's going to happen, but just based on what he's able to do, that walk-off touchdown against the Saints was probably my favorite moment. If I had to look back throughout the whole season, I would have to say that was my favorite moment in the 2017 season, as bad as it was. But just, things like that, I'm really looking forward to as far as, this Tampa Bay offense. And again, once we see what they do on defense, we'll have a better idea of what's happening. Once we see what they do in free agency, we'll have a good idea of what they're doing. One position that we haven't talked about too much here is free agency running back. Are there any free agent running backs that you really like that you could see coming here and splitting time with Peyton Barber and whoever else we draft?
Yeah, definitely. I mentioned, a few guys already on Real Bucs Talk. Isaiah Crowell from Cleveland is a guy I'm interested in. Jared McKinnon from Minnesota is another popular favorite by Bucs fans. Dion Lewis is a big name that I think could be available, that could definitely come in and help us out. I think they're going to add, I said in past podcasts, I think they're going to add a free agent running back, and I think they're going to draft one as well. I think that's where they want to go. They really want to redesign this backfield, get some more dynamic players back there, because they know they have to help Jameis Winston out. And, if you have a running game, Jameis Winston is better quarterback because he can do the play action. He's better in the red zone. You're able to run the football, control the clock. It just makes you better overall as far as an offense and be more efficient. So I think they're definitely going to add a running back. I think Crowell is an interesting name just because of his ability, and I think he's been on a bad team. I think he could really, help this offense. But we'll see what happens. Again, it depends on who's available. We're less than 30 days away from free agency, so we're getting closer. I think once we get to the combine, which is in a couple weeks, we're going to find out, really what's going to be out there as far as free agents and what's going to happen as far as what teams are looking for. So it's going to be interesting to see, what kind of rumors come up about the Bucs and what they're looking at.
Yeah, and again, I'm super excited about this. I normally don't pay a lot of attention to the combine because 9 times out of 10, the general manager has already decided this is who we want, this is our draft board right here. And they may do an interview or something like that just to confirm. But I just, I'm excited this year because there's a lot of players that, I'm interested in seeing how their physical attributes are, what they do in certain instances. So again, it's another piece of football that I'm excited about. And, it's going to be a fun time. I really wish that the draft wasn't in Dallas because I refuse to give Jerry Jones 1 red cent, being the scumbag that he is. So I won't be going to the draft in Dallas, even though it's close enough for me to go to it. Just because of where it's at, I won't be going. But it's something I'm excited about. This draft. This draft is key for this regime. So these guys, they're leaning on their scouts, they're leaning on their own knowledge, and they're working together to make sure that this draft is very effective, which it has to be effective. It doesn't have to be positive. It has to be effective, because all these guys that they're bringing in, they're going to be asked to do more than normal draft picks will normally would be, only because of what's at stake here.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I've been talking with Mark, my partner
We need to
at
get
Real
that
Bucks
guy
Talk.
on. Where's that guy at?
Yeah, I know. I'll have to get him back on here soon. But I've been talking with him, and I told him, looking at how the Bucs need to play this offseason, I think they're going to really look at getting guys that are consistent and safe players, if you know what I mean. Guys that they know will come in and produce, and I think that's how they're going to approach the draft. So that's why I have a hard time, looking at guys that will be, projects to say it. Guys like guys that will need time. Guys like Marcus Davenport, guys like Arden Key, guys that will need time to develop. I just have a hard time.
Players.
Yeah, just have a hard time looking at that direction. Again, not saying I'm not wrong with Marcus. I'd be happy with Marcus Davenport. I think he could come in and help this team as far as a pass rush goes.
But he's so raw.
But I just think he is raw. But again, I think he still has that ability to at least be a pass rusher on third downs, which they need. But again, I just have a feeling they're going to go with a safe player. That's why I look at, I see a lot of Vita Vea on this chat room, and I think that makes a lot of sense. But that's just me.
Now, let's talk about him. I know this is somebody that everybody's been waiting to hear your words of wisdom, your sage wisdom. So, let's talk about him a little bit. I'm glad you dropped his name, because I know a lot of people have been waiting for this moment. So let's talk about him.
I can't say too much. I'll have more on him in about 15 minutes, as far as realbuckstalk.com. You can find more on him there, but I'll just say he's a freak athlete, a giant that can run like a gazelle, has 4.8 speed, 40, 6'4", 345 pounds. The guy he shouldn't be able to move that fast. I mean, he's been clocked at 21 miles per hour by his coaches. That shouldn't happen. A guy with his size and power, and he's still learning the game. I mean, this guy was a former running back coming out of high school at 6'4", 280 pounds. He was a running back and dominated his competition. And he went to Washington. They made him a defensive tackle, and he's still learning the game. At times he's out of place a little bit. Still raw with his hands, but
those are little things that are coachable, that can be brought up.
Yeah, exactly. Robert Green said earlier in the chat, I mean, the guy's a game changer, and I think that's what he can bring to this defense. I think he's a guy you can pretty much build the defense around him, because he's that big of a piece. I mean, he's a center point type of player where he comes in, he makes other players better. And I think that's what you look for.
So let me ask you this. I mean, if you compare him and Chubb, I mean, if the Bucs, if Chubb is there, you get Chubb. Chubb is just a safe move. You know what you're pretty much getting. Do you feel like Vita Vea, if we couldn't get Chubb, Vita Vea is available, you go ahead and pick him, and you go ahead and put him on that line? Is that kind of how you feel about it?
I think he's just a very safe option. I mean, he's very safe as far as prospects go. I think there's a very low floor for him. I think there's a high ceiling. I mean, basically his ceiling and his floor pretty much match, and I think he could be just a guy that you can count on to be good. Not saying he'll be great, but he's going to be a solid player no matter what. But
And
I
you know
don't
what?
know if
That's
that's
what
the
you
next
need
option.
next to that's what you need next to Gerald McCoy. You need consistency.
Right.
You need somebody
Yeah.
that's the every time. That's who you're getting every game.
Mm-hmm.
That's what you're getting. You're not going to hit and miss. You're not going to have somebody that's going to take a game off, or you're not going to have that inconsistency. Is basically what you're saying.
Right. Yeah. And again, I don't know if that's going to be, the next move. It really depends on who's on the board. I mean, if Quentin Nelson is there, I mean, you have to consider him. Obviously, Vita Vea, I think, will be in consideration. I don't see Fitzpatrick. I know a lot of people are on Fitzpatrick, but I don't see the need for him. Obviously, I'll run it down like this. I think it's Chubb. I think it's trade down. If you can trade down, I think that would be a logistic option. Then Vita Vea, and then Marcus Davenport. I really like. I know I said earlier, yeah, he's still raw. He needs a lot of work, but I just like his upside.
Would you pick him up in the second
then,
round?
I don't think he's going to be there again. Like, this draft is not very high on pass rushers as far as demand goes, or as far as supply goes, I should say. So, and the demand is very high for pass rushers. So I think guys are going to get overdrafted. I think you'll see guys like Arden Key and Marcus Davenport, who probably should be second round picks, but they're going to go in the first round, just because of the demand. Same thing with like Harold Landry, who I think is very underrated. I think that's a guy that could be the Bucs pick after it's all said and done, because that he's a freak too. So, I mean, he knows how to get after the quarterback.
Now, let me ask you this. Do you think the Bucs, if they traded down, would be able to put themselves in a position to trade back up into the first round? Is that something that could potentially happen? How coveted is the seventh overall pick in the draft, in your opinion, just based on where teams are falling right now? How coveted would that seventh pick be to a team that has a need and they see a moment in that position?
Yeah, I mean, it depends on the quarterbacks. I think, obviously Arizona needs a quarterback, and if you have one of the top quarterbacks that make it to our spot, I think that's definitely an option where we could trade back, pick up some extra picks, maybe even like a Buffalo if they want to trade up and give us, their first round picks that they have. That's a possibility.
And when you talk about Buffalo, what I'm looking at with Buffalo, they're not going to trade. They're not going to release Tyrod Taylor. They're going to trade him and try to get some value out of him. And again, that could be a potential suitor for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers as well.
Right. Yeah, and let's just recap a little bit. So, I look at it like this, Chubb, and then trade down if possible. Vita Vea, Marcus Davenport, Quentin Nelson if there, but I think he's going to be gone. You look at Harold Landry, and then I think the wild card pick would be a Derwin James. I think if you're going to go defensive back, I think that would be your wild card pick. I just like how he plays. I think he's a good fit for what he could be next to Justin Evans. He's that strong safety type. But again, I don't see that either. Like, that's why I say it's a wild card. I think this team is going to address the secondary and free agency. And I think that will take place. But yeah, I mean, the Bucs are in a good spot at 7. I think there's a lot of good options. They pretty much can't go wrong. I think there's going to be a good player there no matter what. And I think he'll be a player that can help them.
Wow, there you go. So next question for you. What if the Bucs, some Amazement 717 was saying, what if the Bucs trade back in the first and get defensive tackle Taven Bryan? I haven't got a chance to watch a lot of him, so I'm going to see if maybe you have.
Yeah, I do watch Gator games. I am a Gator fan, so yes, I have seen Taven Bryan. He's very good. I mean, he's one of their better players. He knows how to penetrate the pocket. He's a disruptor. Very good technique as far as with his hands. still, still raw at times.
So you would
Again,
say his skill set resonates to the NFL then.
Yeah, definitely, most definitely. I think he'd be a good player, and I think he would be worth trading up for. But I don't know. It depends on how much you have to give up. I think he's definitely going to be a first round pick, but I don't know. I see the Bucs trading down more than trading up, and I'm not sure if they're going to trade back up into the first round. Again, it's got to be someone that really jumps off the tape. I think if they're going to trade back up into the first round.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, all I can say is last year's draft really taught me not to question Jason Light about the draft, only because what he did getting Kendall Beckwith and Justin Evans, and both of those guys, they showed out this year. I thought, for as disappointing a season as it was, we kind of lost track of what these guys came in and did. And, again, I admit I was wrong about Justin Evans and Kendall Beckwith both, because I said, I don't see them translating to the NFL, and they do. So I feel like, this is a great opportunity. I think that, you just kind of have to trust in the process and see what goes on. I think that our general manager will go in and he'll make some moves, and hopefully it'll fill some gaps up and upgrade in some positions to where Tampa can be competitive. To me, I feel like that's more of a realistic scenario than what everybody's talking about, the doom and gloom of, based on what they saw this past season. But I believe you get the right players in, you get a good running back, you fix that offensive line a little bit, tweak it a little bit, and you work on the defensive line, and you're in business.
Yeah, absolutely. Looking at free agency, I think the positions to attack, I think, is going to be running back, secondary, and I think offensive line, and maybe a few defensive linemen here and there. I just don't see them going after, the guys that keep, being mentioned, and Insa and DeMarcus Lawrence and guys like that. I just don't think they're going to be there. And I don't think they're going to be in our price range as far as, because those guys are going to ask for ridiculous amounts of money. And I don't, and with, honestly,
with the wide receiver, what's his name? In Dallas, goodness. Des Bryant is talking about renegotiating his contract and taking less money, which is hard for me to believe with his ego, but it could be a moot point. They could be able to re-sign players that they wouldn't have been able to, prior to that. So see what happens. But yeah. I'm sorry.
Yeah, definitely
go ahead and finish what you were saying. I promise I won't interrupt this time. Promise.
No, I like I said, free agency, I think they're going to attack running back and the guard position, maybe a center, as far as offensive line. And then I think defensively, I think it's going to be the secondary, because that's where it's deep in free agency. I think they're going to sign a couple corners, maybe a safety as well. And, maybe a defensive lineman here or there. I really like Alex Okafor. I think that'd be a perfect fit for us from the Saints. I would like to see him get that guy. I just like his upside. I think he can be something. He was off to a great start last year, but got hurt. So that's the guy to look for. And then the draft, I think they're going to hit it heavily on the defensive line. I think, there's a lot of potential in this draft as far as the defensive line. And I think that's where they're going to attack, in the draft. I think that's where it points to as far as targets.
And again, it's not rocket science. The teams that really do good are the teams that draft well, and they bring those players up through the draft to build their franchise. I think that's huge. And you see what Tampa's done with their linebacker core. Just looking at that, that's a great example of how when you go out and you draft smart, you get players in there and you see what you have.
Right.
And again, if they can do that on the defensive line, this team can be relevant for a while.
Yep, absolutely.
But that's pretty much. I mean, I'm actually looking over here at the Eric Moreno. I think we got everybody's questions.
Yeah, I saw Carlos Hyde mentioned. I say a quick no to that guy. I'm just not a fan of his game. Just too many injuries for me. So quick no on that one.
Yeah, that's kind of what I mentioned, that his injuries scare me.
Yeah.
So, again, and folks, I get everybody's apprehension about buying in this season, but remember, the Bucs had a winning season. Now they have this season. This season right here, 2018, will show who this team is. And I'm all optimistic. I'm all in, regardless. I'm all in every year, but this year especially, because, it was such a disappointing year last year. It was a really weird year with no bye week during the season. And I know to a lot of people that are old schoolers that are like, oh, well, they didn't used to have a bye before the 90s. You know what? We're talking about, this is a modern game. This is where we are right now. The bye is part of the game. And just the way this whole season went was just weird. And I'm glad it's over. And hopefully, God forbid, Tampa doesn't suffer through anything else like that again. Right now, I'm trying to get logistically set up to figure out what games I will be going to. I'll definitely be at a Saints, going to New Orleans to a Saints game, but I want to definitely get down to Tampa again and check out some games. So I'm super excited about that. Again, so many good things to look forward to with the season coming up. Another season of Buck What You Heard, and Real Bucs Talk. You guys are awesome. And this will be, this is part of what I look forward to now. This has become a tradition. If you don't follow Michael Pless or at Real Bucs Talk on Twitter during draft season, you need to. I'm serious. I don't care about any of those other guys. The guys over in ESPN or whoever those guys are. This is the guy you need to be following for the draft. I promise you, you will not be disappointed. So if you're not following him, remember, at Real Bucs Talk, go find him, follow him, and hit him up. Make sure you go out to realbuckstalk.com. He's got a new writer on, Tay _25. She does great work too. I mean, they're building a quality brand over there. And, I know a lot of times that he's posted stuff on social media and people want to try to dispute it. But I can tell you right now, this guy puts a lot of work into what he does. He doesn't just say, oh, I feel this way or I think this way. No, he goes out and he lays the facts out, and it's up to you to decide what you want to believe about it. So you go back and look at his work and compare it to what happened during the season, and you tell me if you don't think that this guy, deserves to be followed in some capacity. He does his thing. So Michael, as usual, I'll tell you, I'm glad to have you on here. You're a big part of Buck What You Heard, a huge part of Buck What You Heard, and I appreciate you.
Thanks, Gene. I appreciate that. I appreciate you as well. And this is a great team we have on this podcast, and I just like how we run the show and continue to find ways to get better. That's what it's about. That's what we're about at Real Bucs Talk. We're finding ways to get better. We're continuing to improve what we put out there and finding ways to, correct our mistakes. Again, we're not perfect. We're not always right. If we were, we'd be millionaires, but the world just doesn't work that way. But yeah, I mean, definitely, if you want, we just provide the facts out there. We try to keep it real with Bucs fans and try to just give our point of view as far as what we're seeing. But yeah, we appreciate all you guys in the chat room. You guys are here pretty much every week, and we appreciate that. And you guys bring the knowledge. So thank you. And yeah, realbuckstalk.com. Check it out in about probably 30 minutes. I'm going to have a very good story on a potential prospect for number 7 for the Bucs, and I think you're going to like it. So
yeah. And next month, I have something really exciting for you guys. We're working on trying to do an NFC South, Buck What You Heard, where I will have people from the Atlanta Falcons, from the Carolina Panthers and from the New Orleans Saints. And we'll all be on to discuss, the teams and, what you're looking for, because I think it's very important to know who you're going up against when the season starts. I mean, you look at Kamara and in New Orleans, nobody saw him coming. Nobody. And, just players like that, just getting an idea of who you're going to see twice a year, it's definitely interesting, and it makes the game a little bit more fun. But anyway, that's pretty much it for me. And Mike, give me your closing thoughts before we jump out of here.
Yeah, I mean, final thoughts. We're 2 weeks away from the combine, which is exciting. I always look forward to that week. A lot of, it's just a lot of fun just following it on NFL Network. It's just something to watch and, get an up close look at these players and how they compete, and really get an in-depth look at what's going to be coming into the NFL. I think is pretty awesome. And again, less than 30 days away from free agency, which is going to be huge for the Bucs this offseason. It's really going to set the tone to how this season is gonna start. So you want to make an impact, but you want to be smart in your decisions, and hopefully we see that this offseason. And as always, go Bucs. And great show tonight again, as always.
All right. Yeah. And for me, guys, thank you, everybody. I really appreciate it. And good news, I will have Buck What You Heard t-shirts available next month. I'm working with somebody else, and I'm trying to get that consistent. So you should see that. We're gonna try to do some different things format-wise with the show, and try to get the show modernized. And I'm really excited about that. And, as long as I got my guy here with me every week, this is going to always be a fun show for me. His knowledge is vast, and I appreciate what he brings to the show, and my madness, you know how I am. So we get out there and we have fun, and that's what it's all about. But anyway, thank you, everybody. Everybody in the chat, as he mentioned, I appreciate you. If I didn't get your comment, hit me up on Twitter. If you want you've got something you want me to say, or somebody you want me to shout out or something, hit me up on Twitter, DM me or whatever, and I'll get it on next week. But that's pretty much it for us this week. And I appreciate you. And just remember, real Bucs talk and Buck What You Heard.